Take a look at some of the aircraft that fought during World War II, from the most famous to the lesser known. Part 1. Vought F4U Kingfisher. In the vast arsenal of World War II aircraft, some were built for blistering speed, others for overwhelming firepower. And then there was the Kingfisher. It wasn't fast, it wasn't glamorous, but for countless sailors and airmen, it was the most beautiful sight in the world. Launched by catapult from the decks of battleships and cruisers, the Kingfisher was the eyes of the fleet. Its primary job was observation and reconnaissance, flying low and slow to spot naval gunfire, search for enemy ships, and patrol for submarines. With a top speed of only 170 miles per hour and armed with just a couple of small-caliber machine guns, it was a vulnerable target. But its pilots flew their hazardous missions with incredible courage, providing vital intelligence that shaped naval battles across the globe. The Kingfisher's design was unique, featuring innovative high-lift devices that allowed for exceptionally slow flight and landings on rough seas. This capability, combined with its rugged construction, unexpectedly turned the Kingfisher into one of the most effective air-sea rescue platforms of the war. Its slow speed became an asset, allowing its two-man crew to spot downed aviators in the vast expanse of the ocean. There are legendary stories of the Kingfisher's life-saving prowess. In 1942, a Kingfisher crew located and rescued World War I ace Eddie Rickenbacker and his B-17 crew after they had been lost at sea for 22 agonizing days. In an even more audacious rescue in 1944, Lieutenant John Burns landed his Kingfisher inside the heavily defended Truk Lagoon, under enemy fire, to rescue downed American airmen. With no room inside, he strapped them to the wings and taxied to a rendezvous with a U.S. submarine. He made multiple trips, saving 10 men from certain capture or death. While fighters and bombers claimed the headlines, the sturdy, dependable Kingfisher operated in the background. It was an unsung hero, a lifeline for those in peril. It stands as a testament that in the chaos of war, sometimes the greatest strength isn't in fighting, but in bringing people home. Messerschmitt Me 410 Hornisse. In the desperate air war over Europe, the Luftwaffe unleashed a versatile and heavily armed twin-engine aircraft, designed to be a jack of all trades. This was the Messerschmitt Me 410, nicknamed the Hornet, and seen here in the A3 variant, after it had been captured by the RAF. The aircraft was born from the failure of its predecessor, the deeply flawed Me 210. Desperate for a capable heavy fighter, Messerschmitt extensively redesigned the 210, lengthening the fuselage, improving the wings with leading-edge slats, and, crucially, fitting it with powerful Daimler-Benz DB603 engines. The Me 410 was envisioned as a true multi-role aircraft. It served as a high-speed bomber, a reconnaissance plane, and most famously as a Zerstörer or destroyer, a heavy fighter tasked with taking down Allied bomber formations. Its standard armament was formidable, typically featuring two 20mm cannons and two 7.92mm machine guns in the nose. But its real sting came from its innovative remote-controlled defensive gun barbettes on each side of the fuselage, each housing a 13mm machine gun aimed by the rear gunner. Furthermore, the Me 410 could be fitted with an astonishing array of factory conversion kits. These field modification kits allowed for the installation of additional cannons. This immense firepower allowed the 410 to attack heavy bombers like the B-17 from outside the range of their defensive machine guns. However, the Hornet's reign was short-lived. While it was a potent bomber killer and a fast intruder at night over Britain, it had a critical vulnerability. The Me 410 was simply no match for the swarms of nimble, high-performance single-engine Allied fighters that began to escort the bomber streams in late 1943 and 1944. Aircraft like the P-51 Mustang and the Spitfire could easily outmaneuver and outclimb the Hornet. Losses mounted alarmingly, and by the summer of 1944, the Me 410 was largely withdrawn from bomber-destroyer duties. Production ceased in favor of single-engine fighters. The remaining Hornets served out the war primarily in reconnaissance roles. A fascinating and powerful design, the Me-410 Hornet represented one of the Luftwaffe's last major attempts to field a successful heavy fighter, a concept that ultimately proved a strategic dead end against overwhelming Allied air superiority. Hawker Typhoon. In the skies of the Second World War, some aircraft are legends from birth, while others must earn their reputation through trial by fire. This is the story of one such aircraft, a machine born of high expectations, plagued by deadly flaws, and ultimately reborn as one of the most fearsome ground attack fighters of the entire war. This is the Hawker Typhoon. Designed as a high-altitude interceptor to counter Germany's best, the Typhoon's introduction in 1941 was nothing short of disastrous. Its powerful 24-cylinder Sabre engine, while innovative, was notoriously unreliable and prone to catching fire. Worse, a deadly structural flaw caused the entire tail section to sometimes shear off in flight. In its early days, the Typhoon claimed more of its own pilots than it did the enemy, and the program was nearly canceled. But a few key figures saw its potential. They saw its raw speed at low altitudes, its incredibly strong airframe when the tail stayed on, and its potential as a stable gun platform. The solution came through persistence and battlefield necessity. Engineers reinforced the tail with distinctive fishplate brackets, and pilots learned the Sabre engine's quirks. Its intended role as a high-altitude fighter was abandoned. Instead, the Typhoon was sent down to the deck, into the thick of low-level combat, and it was here, amongst the flak and chaos, that it found its true calling. Armed with 4 hard-hitting 20-millimeter cannons, it was a deadly strafing machine, but its ultimate weapon was yet to come. By 1943, the Typhoon was being fitted with 8 RP-3 unguided rockets. With a destructive power equivalent to a naval destroyer's broadside, a squadron of Tiffys could obliterate German armored columns, supply trains, and command posts with devastating precision. They became the original tank busters. During the critical Battle of Normandy in 1944, the Hawker Typhoon was the bane of the German army. Allied ground troops learned to love the sight of its distinctive thick wings, knowing that a rocket-armed Typhoon could halt a panzer attack in its tracks. Pilots respected the Typhoon, not for its grace, but for its sheer toughness and overwhelming firepower. It was a brute, a warhorse that could absorb incredible punishment and still bring its pilot home. While the Spitfire danced with fighters high above, the Typhoon went to work in the dirt and smoke below, becoming an indispensable tool for victory and securing its legacy not as the elegant interceptor it was meant to be, but as the rugged, rocket-punching terror of the battlefield. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. Built like a flying tank and armed to the teeth, this is the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. Nicknamed the Jug, it was the heaviest single-engine fighter of World War II, and pilots loved it for one simple reason. It could take an incredible amount of punishment and still bring them home. With 850 caliber machine guns and the ability to carry bombs and rockets, the Thunderbolt was a beast in a dogfight and a terror on the ground. It excelled at escorting bombers deep into enemy territory and then unleashing hell on ground targets. While the P-51 Mustang often gets the spotlight, the rugged and reliable P-47 Thunderbolt was a true workhorse of the Allied victory. Messerschmitt Bf 109. One of the most produced and iconic fighter aircraft in history, this is the Messerschmitt Bf 109. For over a decade, from the Spanish Civil War to the final days of World War II, the Bf 109 was the backbone of the German Luftwaffe's fighter force. Designed by Willy Messerschmitt in the mid-1930s, it was a revolutionary aircraft for its time, featuring an all-metal monocoque construction, a closed canopy, and retractable landing gear. Constantly evolving, the 109 saw numerous variants, with more powerful engines and heavier armament. Early models, like the Emil, dominated the skies over Europe with their cannon and machine guns. Later, the Friedrich version was considered by many pilots to be the best handling, a true pilot's machine. The most produced version, the Gustav, introduced even more powerful engines and weapons to counter increasingly advanced Allied fighters. From the deserts of North Africa to the frozen Eastern Front, the Bf 109 was flown by Germany's top aces, who achieved hundreds of victories at its controls. It was a formidable opponent, known for its incredible climb rate and performance at high altitude. While later Allied designs would ultimately outperform it, the Messerschmitt Bf 109 remains a legend of the sky, a symbol of German aviation engineering and a deadly adversary that left its mark on history. Vought F4U Corsair. With its iconic inverted gull wing and a massive propeller pulled by one of the most powerful engines of its time, the F4U Corsair was an unmistakable force in the sky. This unique wing design wasn't for looks. It was a brilliant piece of engineering to provide clearance for the huge propeller demanded by its 2,000 horsepower engine. Initially deemed tricky for carrier landings, the Corsair was first embraced by the land-based U.S. Marine Corps, where it quickly dominated the skies over the Pacific. Pilots who mastered the bent-wing bird commanded a machine that was fast, incredibly tough, and armed with machine guns that gave it a devastating punch. This combination led to a staggering 11-to-1 kill ratio against enemy fighters. Japanese ground troops nicknamed it Whistling Death for the terrifying sound it made during attack runs. But for the Allied soldiers it protected, it was known as the Angel of Okinawa, a title earned by providing crucial life-saving air support. From World War II to the Korean War, the Corsair cemented its legacy as one of the greatest fighter bombers ever built. Focke-Wulf Fw 200 Elegant, long-range, and a symbol of modern air travel in the late 1930s. The Fw 200 Condor was never intended for war. It was a groundbreaking German airliner celebrated for connecting Berlin to New York on a record-breaking flight. But history had a much darker path for this graceful machine. With the outbreak of World War II, the Condor was repurposed. Its spacious fuselage, designed for comfort, was now filled with bombs, depth charges, and advanced surveillance equipment. Patrolling far out into the ocean beyond the range of most other aircraft, it became a lethal hunter. Winston Churchill called it the scourge of the Atlantic. For the Allied sailors desperately ferrying supplies, the sight of the Condor's long wings on the horizon meant almost certain doom. These lone wolves of the sky would spot convoys, shadow them, and then either strike with their own bombs or guide U-boat wolf packs in for the kill. But the Condor had a weakness, a fragile airframe, a conversion from its civilian design that couldn't withstand heavy combat damage. As the Allies developed new tactics, the Condor's reign of terror began to fade. Savoia Marchetti SM-79 Sparviero. With its unmistakable three-engine design and a prominent dorsal hump, one aircraft came to represent Italian air power in the Second World War, the Savoia Marchetti SM-79, nicknamed the Sparviero, or Sparrowhawk. Originally conceived in the mid-1930s as a fast 8-passenger transport, the SM-79 shattered numerous world speed records in its civilian form. Its mixed construction of wood, fabric, and metal resulted in a lightweight yet robust airframe, and its 3 Alfa Romeo engines gave it performance that few bombers of its era could match. Its military potential was quickly realized, and the Sparviero first saw combat during the Spanish Civil War, flying for the Italian Legionary Air Force. There it established itself as a potent and effective level bomber. However, the Sparviero would earn its most enduring and fearsome reputation over the waters of the Mediterranean Sea. Converted to serve as a torpedo bomber, it became the bane of Allied naval convoys. The brave crews of the Aerosilluratori, as the Italian torpedo bomber pilots were known, specialized in daring low-level attack runs. They would fly just feet above the waves to evade enemy radar and concentrated anti-aircraft fire, pressing their attacks on Royal Navy warships with incredible skill and determination. Throughout the North African and Mediterranean campaigns, the SM-79 was responsible for sinking or crippling dozens of Allied vessels. Yet, for all its success, the Sparrowhawk was not invincible. Its primary weakness was its defensive armament. The collection of machine guns in the dorsal hump and ventral gondola proved inadequate against modern, cannon-armed Allied fighters like the British Beaufighter, which was specifically tasked with hunting them. As the war dragged on, the skies grew increasingly lethal for the aging Sparviero. After the Italian armistice in 1943, the SM-79's story continued. It flew for both the pro-Allied Italian co-belligerent Air Force and the pro-Axis Air Force in northern Italy. A testament to its solid design, some were even used as military transports long after the war, with the very last Sparviero being retired in 1952. From a record-breaking airliner to a feared torpedo bomber, the Savoia Marchetti SM-79 Sparviero remains one of history's most iconic aircraft, a symbol of Italian engineering and the courage of the crews who flew it. Consolidated PB-4Y2 Privateer. In the vast, lonely expanse of the Pacific Ocean during World War II, victory depended not just on island-hopping Marines or carrier-based fighters, but on aircraft that could hunt for days far from any friendly shore. While the famous B-24 Liberator bomber was a master of high-altitude strategic bombing, the U.S. Navy needed something different. They needed a dedicated long-range maritime patrol aircraft, a purpose-built hunter. The result was a machine that looked familiar, yet was fundamentally a different beast. The Consolidated PB-4Y2 Privateer. At first glance, the Privateer's lineage is obvious, but one massive change immediately sets it apart from its B-24 ancestor: the towering single vertical tail fin. This wasn't just for looks. It provided superior stability and control during the long, low-level flights that were the Privateer's bread and butter. The entire aircraft was re-engineered for the maritime mission. The fuselage was stretched by 7 feet, creating more room for its specialized crew and their advanced electronics. Crucially, the B-24's high-altitude turbo superchargers were removed from the Pratt & Whitney engines. The Privateer was destined to work down low, and this change simplified maintenance and improved reliability, two critical factors when your nearest runway is 1,000 miles away. What truly defined the Privateer, however, was its ability to defend itself. Patrol missions were often flown alone, deep in enemy territory, making the aircraft a tempting target. Consolidated responded by turning the Privateer into a flying fortress that bristled with firepower. It carried a staggering 12 50-caliber machine guns. These weren't just stuck in open windows. They were housed in 6 power-operated turrets, including a nose turret, 2 dorsal turrets, a tail turret, and 2 waist blisters, providing overlapping fields of fire that could fend off enemy fighters from nearly any angle. But its offensive punch was just as impressive. With a massive bomb bay, it could carry bombs, mines, or depth charges to prosecute targets at sea or on land. More than that, the Privateer became a pioneer of smart weaponry, being one of the only aircraft of the war to deploy the Bat bomb. This was a revolutionary radar-guided glide bomb, an ancestor of modern anti-ship missiles. A Privateer could launch the Bat from a safe distance and let its own radar guide it to an enemy vessel, making it an incredibly advanced and lethal ship hunter for its time. Entering service late in the war, the Privateer quickly made its mark, flying grueling 14-hour patrols, hunting for Japanese submarines and surface ships, conducting reconnaissance, and providing air-sea rescue. Its service didn't end with VJ Day. The rugged design proved so effective that Privateers flew on for years, serving with the U.S. Navy in the Korean War, with the Coast Guard as search and rescue planes, and even with the French Navy into the 1960s. The PB-4Y2 Privateer was more than just a modified bomber. It was a testament to purpose-built design. Curtiss P-36 Hawk. Before the Mustang and Thunderbolt, there was another American fighter that held the line. Meet the Curtiss P-36 Hawk, an aircraft that was more successful in foreign hands than in its own. While obsolete by the time of Pearl Harbor, The P-36 has a unique claim. It was a P-36 pilot who scored one of the very first American aerial victories of the war. But its true fame was found elsewhere. In the skies over France in 1940, French pilots flying the Hawk put up a fierce fight during the Blitzkrieg, scoring hundreds of victories against the Luftwaffe. Even more impressively, in the hands of Finnish aces during the Winter and Continuation Wars, the P-36 became a legend. Outnumbered but skillfully flown, Finnish Hawks achieved an incredible kill ratio against Soviet forces. With its classic pre-war design and radial engine, the P-36 was a bridge between two eras, an underdog that, in the right hands, proved that the skill of the pilot was just as important as the speed of the plane. North American B-25 Mitchell. On April 18, 1942, the world held its breath as 16 B-25 Mitchell medium bombers lumbered off the deck of the USS Hornet, hundreds of miles from their target. This was the Doolittle Raid, a daring one-way mission to strike Tokyo. These bombers weren't designed for carrier takeoffs, but with grit and exceptional skill, their pilots lifted them into the sky, proving the B-25's versatility and delivering a massive blow to enemy morale. But while the legend of the Doolittle Raid cemented the B-25 in history, it was only the beginning of its evolution. The true terror of the Mitchell was yet to be unleashed, not as a medium-altitude bomber, but as a low-level bringer of destruction, a flying gunship. As the war in the Pacific intensified, the need for a potent anti-shipping and ground attack aircraft became critical. The answer was to transform the B-25. Engineers did something audacious. They removed the bombardier's station and replaced it with pure concentrated firepower. The B-25G variant appeared with a massive 75mm cannon in the nose, the largest gun ever mounted on a production bomber at the time, capable of punching holes in enemy ships. But this was just the start. The subsequent B-25H model was the apex predator. It kept the 75mm cannon and added 4 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns in the nose, 2 more on the fuselage cheeks, and could be supplemented by waist gunners and a tail gunner, turning the aircraft into a flying arsenal. These gunships would scream in at treetop or mast height, leading with the earth-shattering thump of the cannon before unleashing a torrent of .50 caliber rounds that would shred everything in their path. They decimated Japanese shipping, destroyed supply depots, and annihilated ground concentrations with brutal efficiency. The Mitchell had transformed from a respectable bomber into the Pacific theater's most feared strafer, a true gunship that proved its adaptability and its devastating power long after its famous first mission over Tokyo. Supermarine Spitfire. It is an image that defines a nation's defiance, an elegant silhouette against the summer skies of 1940. More than just a machine, it is a symbol of hope, a masterpiece of engineering that became a legend. This is the Supermarine Spitfire. Born from the mind of designer R.J. Mitchell, the Spitfire was a revolution. Its most iconic feature was its sleek elliptical wing, a shape that provided incredible aerodynamic efficiency, giving it superb handling and a phenomenal rate of climb. Combined with the steady, reliable power of the legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Spitfire was a pure, thoroughbred fighter, beloved by the pilots who flew it. Its moment of glory came during the Battle of Britain. Outnumbered but not outmatched, the pilots of RAF Fighter Command flew their Spitfires against the might of the Luftwaffe in a desperate struggle for survival. The Spitfire's superior performance, especially its tight turning circle, made it a deadly opponent for the German Messerschmitt Bf 109. Often working in a deadly partnership with the Hawker Hurricane, the Spitfire would engage the German fighter escorts while the Hurricanes tackled the bombers. It was the shield that protected the nation in its darkest hour. But the Spitfire was no one-trick pony. As the war progressed, it evolved continuously. From the early Mark I to the powerful Griffin-engined late-war variants, The Spitfire served in every theater of the war, adapting to new roles as a fighter-bomber, a photo-reconnaissance aircraft, and a carrier-based fighter as the Seafire. Over 20,000 were built, and it served with dozens of Allied air forces, proving its legendary versatility. It remained a top-tier fighter from the first day of the war to the very last. The Spitfire is more than just a famous warplane. It is a piece of history, an icon of grace and power whose distinctive engine roar still evokes the spirit of defiance and victory.